what I want to do is allow Ms. Terri Denison to speak on what this is that the disaster relief takes care of, what type of availability is there for small businesses, what is the criteria, what are they looking for, is it going to be a little more lax than normal, or all those types of questions. All right, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and let me make sure Ms. Terri, go ahead and speak.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad, as I told someone earlier, I'm glad to speak before your group, even though I'm sorry it had to be under these circumstances. But basically what I'm going to share with you today is what the U.S. Small Business Administration is doing for small businesses in response to coronavirus or COVID-19. Just by the way of background, to kind of put this in some kind of context, you know, the SBA, we generally provide services for people who are looking to start as well as grow their businesses, just, you know, in a normal day-to-day operational way. Within SBA, we have a whole separate operation, Office of Disaster Assistance. And they're the ones who, when there's a declared disaster, most of the time, as Ariel mentioned, it's a natural disaster, but it can also be a man-made or person-made disaster as well. The nature of what they do tends to be local because of the nature of, you know, the typical disaster. It may be counties within a state. This is the first time that the SBA disaster assistance loans are being used for a national disaster, if you will. And the tool that we're using is our SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loans, or EIDLs as we call them, or IDLs. You know. Basically, those loans, to distinguish from loans that are used when there's physical damage, is to help small businesses that have been negatively impacted by the disaster, be it natural, be it person-made. Because when there's a disaster, you know, things as usual cease, and business, you know, everyone is focused on dealing with the situation at hand. It does have a negative impact on business. You know, they're not getting the customers, the commerce isn't going as it normally would. So what this EIDL tries to do is to help small business maintain and be able to continue to operate to some degree until the negative impact of the disaster has subsided and things go back, quote unquote, to normal. So this is an established program that's been around, as I mentioned, for a while. Basically, the loans can go up to $2 million. There is not a minimum loan amount, and the proceeds can be used to cover your basic operating expenses. So fixed expenses, for example, things that you're going to have to pay regardless of whether you're generating revenue or not. So, you know, rent, utilities, payroll, accounts payable, etc. And basically what the agency will look at is what was the business, how they were operating, and what their financial position was prior to the disaster. For this purpose, we're considering the start date of the disaster as January 30th, 2020, and ongoing. So what they'll look at is what was, you know, like maybe your last year's financial, if you've been in business more than a year, what was the financial picture of the business, the cash flow, et cetera, before that January 30th date, and what has happened in the period since January 30th. And that will help establish that there's been a severe economic harm to the business. So the loans can be up to $2 million, and their interest rate currently on them, those are set by statute. So currently it is 3.75% for small businesses and 2.75% for nonprofits. And I do emphasize the nonprofits because normally with the regular SBA loan programs and other programs, they're specifically by law for for-profit entities. For for-profit entities. In the case of disaster, most private nonprofit organizations can qualify for disaster assistance loans, including these EIDL. The repayment term is going to be determined on a case-by-case basis, but they can go as long as 30 years. Because what we're trying to do here, obviously people didn't ask for this situation. It's not like our regular loans where people are making a business decision or personal decision to start a business or expand a business. This is a reactionary situation. So we try to work with the borrower to make sure that the terms are long enough so they have as low a monthly payment as possible. Also, there's no prepayment penalty. So as things go back, quote unquote, to normal, business picks back up, hopefully maybe even ends up being better than it was before, you have the option of paying it off or accelerating the payment. And SBA is very flexible on that. In terms of collateral, because that's usually something that's considered in business loans, we try to be flexible there as well. If it's $25,000 or under, we consider that an unsecured loan. So the issue of collateral doesn't even come up. It's just unsecured. If it's over that $25,000 up to the maximum of $2 million, then what the law says is that we should take any available collateral. So if there's not collateral available, that is not a deal breaker, and that cannot be the reason why the loan is declined. Because once again, you're in a situation that you did not ask for. But and then if there is collateral available and people choose not to pledge that collateral, then that could be a reason for decline. But it can't be because you don't have it. Mm-hmm. Some of the other things that we're doing outside of the disaster assistance loans for like our current borrowers from our mainline loan guarantee programs, we are working with our lenders and encouraging them and giving them permission to issue deferments for periods up to 6 months in most cases. If the loan has been sold on the secondary market to an investor, you can have up to 90 days deferment. Another thing about the economic injury loans, there is a deferment for 1 year, and that usually it's 6 months. But in the case of this particular situation, the administration went with going a full year. And if someone had a disaster loan because of another declared disaster, then payments are deferred through the end of the calendar year as well. So once again, the idea is we want to try to keep the cost of the program down and make it a loan versus a grant, because we do not have a lot of grant authority as an agency. But we're trying to be as flexible as possible with the borrowers who have been impacted by this situation. The best way to apply, there's a couple options. The one that we prefer and really recommend people use is our electronic loan application, which is at sba.gov/disaster. You can actually go online, see what the process is, see what documentation or information you need, and proceed with applying for the loan that way. You can do it by paper if you choose, and you can download the forms that are needed for the paper application from that same website. What I would say is that they tend to take longer because the priority is given to the ones that are done online, because they tend to be, have less likelihood of mistakes or missing documentation. So that would be my advice to you. Use the online application. If you need assistance, there is a customer service toll-free number, 800-659-2955. And you can also email disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. Also, I know they are ramping up still, trying to get additional employees to really meet this unprecedented demand. So we're trying to help out at the local level through the district offices to field questions as well and try to get you answers. So you can email us at Georgia, spelled out Georgia, @sba.gov. And that's basically it in a nutshell of the program. Somebody wants to know what the number is again. It is 800-659-2955. And at the website, sba.gov/the disaster, the number will be there as well as the customer service email address. And for the district office, it would be Georgia, spelled out, @sba.gov. So I know there's questions out there.
Yeah, everyone type your questions, please, in the chat box. The other thing that I didn't know is you guys are doing loans for nonprofits. So this is the first time you're doing that.
Well, it's always been available under the disaster assistance, because we also, apart from this particular situation, when there's a physical disaster, there's also physical disaster assistance loans, and they're eligible. They, being nonprofits, are eligible for that as well. But that's the only context in which we provide loans to nonprofit organizations.
Okay. Marquita, she says, I'm in the travel industry. We own a travel agency. Would my type of business be considered too risky for this type of SBA assistance?
No, in fact, because of the nature of this disaster or emergency, the travel industry obviously has been very heavily hit by this. So we expect a lot of the applicants to be travel related businesses. Kind of as a comparison, the closest thing we've ever really done to something like this in using the economic injury disaster loans was with 9/11. And while it wasn't totally national, was initially was localized assistance around D.C. and New York, which were directly hit. But over a 6-month period after that time, it was a lot of different industries that were impacted, so hospitality and travel. A lot of loans under that declaration were given to travel businesses. So no, by all means apply. In fact, I've been working with a travel agency that is in the same situation.
That's a good question. Tanya Lewis, she was trying to complete the application. Is this based on current year business setup or prior?
What they will look at is, and I think in the direction it asks for like your latest financial statements, profit and loss, balance sheet, had to be more than 90 days. Well, since we're in March, more than likely, if you did your year-end financials for 2019, you could utilize that. And then there's a worksheet to, I think, looking at what your financial picture is, your schedule of obligations, in terms of debt. So kind of look at, and you'll look at what your balance sheet and profit and loss statement was, last year, and then look at, where you are now based on those documents and the questions that they ask. Okay. So the key is, if you want to decline, before this occurred, before January 30th, then that's not going to, necessarily be, this is not necessarily going to be your answer. Because the idea is you were operating, fairly well or decently, and then you had a major drop because of what is going on now. If
Right.
It was declining before, then it's hard to make that judgment call that, okay, yes, you're suffering economic harm specifically because of the current situation.
So Jennifer Hill asks, will this only cover lost payroll for employees? And I think the
No,
answer is no. But yeah.
no, no, it covers, any, your accounts payable to your vendors, any financial obligations that you have, maybe in terms of debt that's not SBA related. Like I said, if you got a mortgage on your business or lease payments because you're leasing the space. So it's a variety of things that are expenses that the business is going to have to cover regardless of whether you're generating revenue or not.
Okay. And Mitchell Tullock, they went into full-time in business in January of 2020. So I do not have the full-time financials to show. I use my income to fund my business. What is my option?
Ooh, that may get a little trickier. What I would recommend is that you maybe work with one of our resource partners that provide they're partly funded by us to provide free one-on-one consultation. And you can use them to kind of help you put together kind of your financial picture based on what you've done since you opened in January. And then that information could be submitted. Because if you're looking up, depending on where you started in January, so let's say you started the first week in January, things started happening on the 30th. I would say apply, but you might need a little more work in making the case since you just started in January. But I wouldn't say don't apply.
That's a good question. Terri Marie says, if your nonprofit has not filed taxes, would that disqualify you from getting funds?
Well, I guess the question is, did you owe taxes? If taxes were supposed to be filed and you owe taxes, then probably not. Because one of the things they are going to look at is how your obligations with the federal government have been handled. So I would say you might want to talk.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that, it would be a little tricky if there was supposed to be, paperwork done and it hasn't. Because that's one of the things we're going to look at is how you've handled your obligations to the federal government as well as your private obligations.
Okay. I'm going to come back to you, Roberta, but she's asking for the number and website. We'll get that out to you guys. Magnolia Pink, are approval decisions based on personal, business credit, or a combination of both?
It could be probably a combination of both. It depends, I guess, first of all, how you're structured. If you have a corporate, an entity, like an LLC or a corporation, they will look at that history, but more than likely they're going to look at your personal history too. The one thing about this particular loan is that they will, they're, once again, because this is not something you chose to have happen, I think they're a little more flexible if your credit score is lower, let's say in the 600s. They're going to ask, well, kind of look and see if there's a particular reason behind that, in medical bills, divorce, whatever. If it's situational, then they can work around that. But if you're in bankruptcy, probably not. But if you've been discharged, there's no length of time. So you got discharged last week, then you've been discharged. Then they're not going to say it has to be so many years out from being discharged. So there's a little more flexibility there than maybe with your conventional or SBA-backed commercial loans.
Diana Avery, is there a time limit on applying? Don't need now, but don't know the future. I thought the time expiration was December 31. Was that accurate?
I think it's December 18th, but yes, it is December of 2020, so you do have time.
Yes. So yes, Diana, you have some time. I changed my business, Tanya Lewis. I changed my business from a Schedule C to 1120S for 2020. Is that a question? Tanya, are you making a statement? Okay. Kimberly Corbin, how do you proceed if you are an independent contractor for over 10 years and just transition into an LLC within the last year and don't have years of taxes and paperwork as of yet? However, I have over 10 years of a 1099 from clients and accounts payable statements from previous years. That's a good question.
Yeah, I think that could be addressed because people do, start out as a sole proprietor, which they are eligible for these loans. I did not mention that earlier. And they transition into either LLC or S Corp or C Corp. As long as the basic composition of the ownership hasn't changed, it's just, okay, I'm still the owner. Let's say you're the 100% owner as a sole proprietor, and you're still the sole owner. You're just incorporating or forming an LLC, then it really is, for this purpose, the same entity. And then you would submit, what I would recommend is maybe submit the documentation, like maybe your Schedule C from your 1040 that you filed as a sole proprietor, and any documents or financials related to that period, and just indicate I just formed my LLC, this year.
That's a good question. All righty. So I don't want to miss anybody. Carolyn. Hey, Carolyn, if you have multiple businesses, will one have to apply for each or all in one application? That's a really good question.
You would have to apply separately. If they're different legal entities, then yeah, you would have to submit an application for each legal entity.
Okay.
I think they would still look at, the loans of all these entities in totality to see that you don't exceed the $2 million cap. So it's not maximum of $2 million for each legal entity that you own.
Okay, so when you say 2 million max, you're basically saying if your profit was over 2 million, you do not qualify for a loan?
No. What I'm saying is the loan maximum EIDL is $2 million. So if you have more than one entity, you have to submit an application for each of your businesses because they're separate legal entities. The total of them, say you had 4, the total cannot exceed $2 million.
Okay. All right.
Because it's the same owner, but you do have to apply separately.
Gotcha. Okay. And Melinda, once a loan is approved, what is the turnaround time on disbursement? Also, how soon will first payment be due? Question.
Okay. They're looking at, right now they're citing a 20, kind of the maximum or average time being 21 days. And that could possibly go down as they bring on more people from the reserve cadre that they have, bring them online to help with this process. In terms of the disbursement, once the loan is approved, then you will receive the documents like the loan authorization and a couple other documents to facilitate the closing. So it's not a formal closing like with maybe a business loan, a regular business loan. And so once that, the owner takes care of that process and get the loan closed, then they're looking at probably a week or so.
Oh, wow, that's pretty quick.
1 to 2 weeks.
Are you directly working with a bank of your choice? Who chooses the, how does that work?
Okay. Well, this is, once again, one of the exceptions to the regular SBA loan programs. With our regular programs, you do involve a lender and we're the guarantor. The EIDL loans and all the disaster assistance loans are actually direct loans made by SBA. It's the only direct lending that we do to businesses. So there's no lender involved. Just
no lenders. Wow. Okay. That is different. Oh, Renee, yeah, wow, that's awesome. Wow, Magnolia Pink. Okay, so I know a couple of things that were asked of our ladies. Do they need P&L statements? Do they need full business plans? What additional do you need? Because if you're looking for something that is considered unsecure, if it's under 25,000, what will you need outside of just financials, as far as bank statements?
Okay, sure. Well, you don't have to do a business plan because,
Okay.
because of
Wow.
the nature of this, of what's going on here. So you don't have to have a business plan. You do have to submit your tax return, for the business, at least the most recent ones that you filed, the profit and loss statement, balance sheet. There's a couple forms that you would complete for SBA, which looks at kind of what is your debt schedule, okay, on a monthly basis, who are your creditors, and how much you pay them on per month. What is your payroll amount if you have staff that you're covering payroll for, if you're leasing space or have a mortgage on a building that you're buying, what is that monthly payment? So that's the kind of information that they would be requesting. There is the IRS, I believe it's 4509T form, which is an authorization for SBA to get the tax transcripts, your tax return transcripts. You still submit your tax return, but we ask for the transcript so that we can compare.
Right. You want to direct
What's provided to us. We can see that that in fact was what IRS got, because unfortunately there have been people who told IRS one thing and then they try to show us something different. So
Right.
that's what that form is for us to have access to the transcript so that we can compare. So that's basically it. It tends to be, I think, less documentation than our regular SBA guaranteed loans, because once again, it's for a particular situation that people did not choose to be in.
Wow, that's really good information. Okay, guys, do you have any additional questions? Please, please, please ask now. I strongly suggest you do so. I think one of the things
I
that,
did see,
okay, did I miss
I'm
it?
sorry, I just saw a couple questions about when will the
Oh,
first payment be due,
uh-huh.
and it won't be due for 12 months.
Oh, wow.
And this is something that is particular to this declaration. Normally it's 6 months, but they made it 12 months.
That's really good. I think I did miss, let's see if we missed any questions. Yes, first payment due, that will be, Ms. Denison has mentioned 12 months from the point of when you receive funding. And Sierra, how long do you have to have been in business is what she just requested. She just asked.
Yeah. There isn't an official, you have to be in business X period of time. What, practically speaking, what you have to be able to show is that my business was negatively impacted by the COVID-19 situation. So the only way you can really demonstrate that is to be able to show what your performance was before January 30th, 2020, and what it has been since that date up to present. So obviously, the longer you've been in business, the stronger you can make that case. But there isn't in writing. You have to be in business at least this period of time.
Okay. And Roberta Flowers asks, can you apply if your business is a partnership?
Yes, any form of business is eligible. The only difference is when you go, whether you apply online or you choose to submit a paper application, there are two versions of it. One if you're a sole proprietor, and then there's one for all the other forms of business, which includes partnerships.
Okay. Mitchell, I missed this. Mitchell Tulloch, who are your resource partners? You mentioned that you have a few resource partners that they can go to actually apply for or
Yeah.
talk with.
Sure. There's several entities that we work with. One I know in particular that are prepared to help businesses that are applying for these disaster assistance loans is the UGA Small Business Development Center. We partner with University of Georgia to deliver that program. There's 17 around the state, 5 in Metro Atlanta. And to see who's closest to you, I would go to their website, and I guess we can type that in as well. But it's Georgia SBDC, all one word.
Is Georgia spelled out?
Georgia spelled out. GeorgiaSBDC.org.
SBDC.org.
Yeah, I'll type it. You want to type it, or I'll type it? I'll type it.
Okay, that's fine. Is that right? Georgia SBDC.
Yeah, that's it. Perfect.
Okay.
That's it.
All righty.
And it'll go, and when you go to that page, it'll have locations, and then you'll get the page with all the locations, and you can see who's there, where they're located, etc. And you would make an appointment to see someone.
Terri Marie said, I thank you both for taking the time out of this Tuesday morning and sharing this valuable information. Your leadership and giving is greatly appreciated. I have 3 companies and we need to brace for the long game. You're welcome, Terri Marie.
Yes.
So is there a thought on how long this impact will be to businesses, or is that something you can speak on?
I mean, that's something that has been discussed a lot within SBA and also with the other federal agencies that have a piece in trying to help us through this. And we're kind of playing it here, day by day. For example, we are kind of on telework until, next Tuesday. But it could very easily be that we get something else from the administrator saying, okay, it hasn't peaked yet, we need to continue the whole social distancing for a longer period of time. There's so many people with so many opinions out there. I would say, maybe plan for at least a couple months. Because the thing is, you can always shorten the period. And what I've been advising people is, figure out what your losses or your shortfalls have been from January 30th until now, and then maybe project what your needs are going to be for the next couple months, 2 to 3 months, in coming up with an amount to ask for. Even though the form doesn't necessarily, or the application, especially the online, does not have a particular place to put an amount, there is an additional information box. And what we've been advised to tell people is, if you worked it out with the worksheets we provide, and you've documented what your shortfalls have been since January 30th, you can come up with an estimated amount and just put that amount in. And that'll give them something to start with, and then the people who are reviewing the applications and making decisions can adjust and have conversation with you about that. But there are suggestions that people put in a ballpark figure. So I would say project out for another 2 to 3 months on top of what has happened since January 30th.
Awesome. Let's see if we missed anything. I think the big takeaway is you do not need a business plan. That you do need to provide. So it is a mix of business and personal, I'm assuming, if you're needing credit scores. Are you needing credit scores? I think that's one of the questions.
Well, there isn't SBA doesn't have an official minimum,
Yeah.
and especially on disaster loans, but they're going to look at your credit history just to kind of see how have you dealt with your obligations in the past to get a general sense of that. And like I said, if there's been challenges, then they can kind of see, well, that was only for a certain period of time, talk about maybe what happened during that period of time. If it's something that's been throughout, then it's like, well, it's not situational, it's just the way this person has handled their credit. So you kind of look at it truly on a case-by-case basis rather than just come up with an arbitrary number for a minimum credit score.
So I know we talked a little bit about the under 25,000. So what about the over 25,000? When you're looking for collateral, what does that collateral look like?
Okay. They could look at, I think preference is, probably real estate. A lot of people don't have commercial real estate because they're not necessarily, the service business, maybe they work out of their home. I think homes are put up as collateral in a lot of cases.
Equipment as well, correct?
Equipment, your business equipment, receivables, they probably would consider that and give some credit towards the receivables, but not as much as a tangible asset. But there would be some credit or consideration given to those receivables.
Okay. Is there a particular reason that we backdated it to January 30th or 31st?
30th.
30th. What is the reason for that?
Well, because and that kind of goes back to kind of how the disaster assistance loans generally work. Generally you have an event, like a tornado, hurricane, or we've even done it for like civil unrest, like in LA back in the 90s. There was a specific date. So, I'm not sure necessarily, I don't know if it's based on maybe a pronouncement from, the president that, okay, we have a situation. I'm not sure how they came up with January 30th, but I guess they were recognizing the fact that this just didn't start last week or 2 weeks ago.
Gotcha. So basically what that means, guys, if there has been any decline in your business, and they're looking at it as of, if your decline started since January 30th, you can claim that basically. And I know federal, there's a lot of EIDL and acronyms. Can you say what EIDL please stands for?
Yeah, economic injury disaster loan.
Okay. All right, guys. Is there any additional questions? We actually still have people trying to come in to the meeting.
I did see one about are the local SBDC offices open right now during this time. They are doing counseling, a lot of cases via phone and via Zoom or webinar format, video counseling, video chat.
Okay. One question did come in a private format. Are you guys hiring? do you all need some help?
Well, and we have actually been getting a lot of those questions. What I would recommend, I'm sure the Office of Disaster Assistance, which is kind of the other side of the SBA house, but we work very closely with them. They actually have their own hiring process separate from the general SBA hiring process. So what you might want to do is look at USA Jobs.
Yeah.
and on that website, that's where all the federal jobs are posted, because my understanding is they are looking to ramp up. And so I think I saw a couple of announcements that actually happened before the disaster loans came out, but there's supposed to be some more being added. So you want to check that website out, look for Atlanta, because unfortunately the Disaster Assistance Office for the eastern half of the United States is also located here in Atlanta.
Okay. All right. Sugar Bear, you came a little late. If you have several businesses, should you do multiple loans? The answer to that is yes. If the businesses are separate entities, they are requiring separate applications. SCORE and SBDC are doing virtual counseling. You just need to make an appointment online if you can call the appointment line. Thank you, Trillian Kaysen. All right, everyone. Jill, thank you so much. Anchor Services, thank you, ladies, so much. You're welcome. Trillian, this has been very valuable and detailed information. Thank you, Terri and Southern Crescent Women. You're welcome. I am in the event industry. Okay, Melinda. And we have been heavily affected. Are we able to apply? I'm going to say something to that. Yes, you are.
Yeah.
One of my members actually went ahead and put in an application because everything has had to be pushed back, rescheduled. There are a lot of like, for example, one of our members, she actually doesn't do refunds. So traditionally she didn't do refunds. So this has really hit them pretty hard. So Miss Terri, if you can talk a little bit about that.
Definitely you're able to apply. It's pretty broad who can apply. The only exceptions would be kind of our usual, nothing speculative. A governmental entity can't apply. I mean, the majority of your earnings don't come from gambling. I mean, that's the type of limitations they are. But in terms of like industry type, no. The key is, have you been adversely affected by this current crisis?
Okay, there's a question. Can you apply if your company is still pre-revenue? This has delayed development and impacted our sales.
Ooh, that's a tough one. There's nothing saying that you can't, but I would have to be honest and say that it would be tough because there's nothing to compare it to. The only thing I would say is maybe if you did project, assuming that you did a business plan, and if you have projections, you can show that your company, didn't meet your projections.
Well,
and I know they'll look at that, but
it's
tougher.
Right.
Huh?
I said, so that's an area you
tough.
would need a business plan. And so for that person, they may want to reach out to your partners, like
to kind of see how they could best present their, financial picture. But I do remember our disaster assistance folks who actually look at these applications saying, they will look at projections, that you may have had, and then they'll look at it like any lender would. Okay, are these reasonable for that particular industry? And then decide how much value they will put on them in making their decision.
Good question, Sierra. Are churches included in nonprofits? So one of the things, if you got here late, nonprofits are included. If churches are included, I do not know, but Ms. Terri can answer that.
Yeah. One of the exceptions is religious institutions. So I don't think they would be eligible, unfortunately.
So when you say a religious institution versus a church, what does that mean?
No, I'm just saying religious institutions would include
the
churches.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, everyone. So we thank Ms. Terri. Yes, this is going to be recorded. It is recording. Hopefully it didn't record some of the technical issues. But again, we thank you, Ms. Terri Denison, from the U.S. Small Business Administration. And, as much information that we can get to you guys, we will. And we just hoping that everybody is able to sustain as much as possible. Again, you are eligible to apply. Let me tell you this. Just apply. They could either say yes
Yeah.
or no. You know, so any last words, Ms. Denison?
No, I would echo what you just said. In fact, even our disaster assistance folks, who are the ones who have to process all of these applications, they're like, if in doubt, apply. You know, what I'd also say is, if anybody's in the corporate limits, well, probably don't have too many people in the corporate limits of Atlanta, but I know they've come up with their own program that goes up to 30,000. So you might check to see if your local municipality is doing anything or coming up with anything as well.
That's a good point. I've been kind of easing some folks and pushing them, nudging them, because I don't think they understand the abilities that they have. I know there is some funding coming down to the mayors. There was a big request from mayors for some funding. I think it was around 250 million. I don't know that exact number. I don't know if you do.
No, I don't. And there's still some legislation, as you might know, that's being considered up in Washington to provide additional assistance. So I would just tell people, stay tuned. We're going to stay tuned, and as we get information on in terms of other opportunities or tools that are there to help small businesses, we'll be sure to get that out to you so you can get it out to your members.
And I appreciate that. We have one of the bankers online, everyone.
Okay.
So Heritage Bank was on with us.
Yes.
When was that? I can't remember. Hi, Dodie. She has mentioned that they do have programs for churches for those who were asking specifically about the church question. There is another question. If you've not completed 2019 returns, can you apply? I'm going to say yes, but if you have any.
Yes, you just give them your 2018 return.
Absolutely. All right. I have your private messages. Thanks, Terri May. I haven't forgotten. She offers additional support for those who may need additional credit, and we can get with that. Maybe get a call together for that as well. Sabrina, yes, I have your email. I will make sure you're added. And I think that is all, everyone. So thank you all for joining Southern Crescent Women in Business and the U.S. Small Business Administration District Director, Ms. Terri Denison. She came down for the funding pitch. She's here now. We appreciate you.
I'm glad to be of service to you.
Thank you all. All right, everyone. Have an amazing Tuesday. Have a good one.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.